Martin Kiszko is a composer and screenwriter, and he has composed over 200 scores for film and television and released 8 albums with major European orchestras. And his screenplays include children's fantasy Junk World as well. And the two of the books that I have are Green Poems for the Blue Planet. That is the most important one, which has some amazing trail of poetry, which is on touching on various topics of environment and sustainability. And the way he touches beautifully on, the fact that how a child thinks, how a child can fantasize about these things and try to connect that education through that fantasy. That is where he is so special, and it's such a privilege to have you on our show, Martin, today.
Thank you.
And I'll also take a minute to introduce his friend Nick Park, who has done illustrations for these beautiful books that he has written. And the three books that he wants to talk about is, one is Green Poems for the Blue Planet, and that is having part 1 and part 2, some more green poems. And then we have the autobiography and the epic poem, which he will be reciting in detail today. So once again, a very warm welcome, Martin.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Perfect.
Great green champions.
Yes, you were in India, I think 1.5 years back, exactly, right?
Yes.
When we met in Leela.
We did. Yes, we had a great time, and I had a wonderful time performing in Bangalore. I absolutely loved it. Working with children who were very enthusiastic, very energetic. Who wanted to save the planet, who wanted to contribute, and we worked together on trying to get my message across, but also their message across through the power of poetry, which I believe poetry is a very powerful medium.
Absolutely, because through poems you first of all get the means of expression, and second, the person who is listening to it also gets to connect and sometimes interpret a deeper meaning than what is being conveyed.
So, yes, writing a poem is just like almost sending a text or sending a postcard to somebody. You can keep the message, you can keep what you want to say very short, very succinct, and it will usually hit home, and the recipient, the person listening to it, will usually remember the message, and that is the beauty of short form poetry.
Because that evokes that emotion. Usually people remember emotions and how they feel the most. They may forget the facts that you share with them, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel. So that's why
that's right. The kind of emotional landscape of the poem is very important, and also how we react to things is very important. When I was in India, a lot of young people came up to me and they said, how can we, okay, you've done your show and you've got your books and you've told us about all the green issues that you are very concerned about, environmental issues, but what else can we do to save the planet? How can we do it? And this is where the emotional connection comes in, because I said, well, if you have an emotional connection to, let's say, your brother or your sister, or if you're a parent to your child, or if you're a child to your parent, or maybe you have a pet that you really like and that you really love. And I would say to the young people, do you know what that feels like to love that person or to love that pet? And they say, yes, we do. I say, well, that's exactly the same emotional connection that we have to have with our planet.
Absolutely.
If we don't have that love connection with our planet, we just won't want to do anything.
That's right. So just to start off the discussion, I would like to, take you back to those childhood memories that you have, and want you to share some excellent memories that you would like to share with our audiences, and trace your journey from those initial imprints that you got, and how you got interested into poetry, how you got interested into environment, and when did you make this your career choice. So if you could help us take through this whole journey, that would be great.
Yeah, well, my father grew up in Belarus, and well, in fact, it was Poland at that time, but it's Belarus now, that part of of Europe, and so of Eastern Europe. So he grew up with forests and lakes and rivers and marshes with animals. And when he came to this country, to the UK after the war, and then he settled down and met my mother, and then I came along. And then as a child, I always remember going out with him into the woods, you know, and walking with him, and him talking to me about the trees and the plants and so on. At that time, I was very interested in animals and in what I could find. I loved chasing butterflies, and unfortunately, I loved collecting them as well at that time.
So
And the same with newts. I used to love going to catch newts. Well, you know, you wouldn't be allowed to do that nowadays because they're protected, of course. But when I was a child growing up in the 1960s, you know, we didn't know any better at that time. But what it did do is that it brought me in tune with the environment, and it brought me in tune with connection with wildlife. And butterflies were always my favorite. So I was always playing in the meadows and chasing the butterflies and hoping that I might find something like a red admiral, which was really scarce, very difficult to find, or a peacock butterfly. So I had a lot of enjoyment. And then later on, when I eventually went through school and university and so on, I was really lucky when I came out of university to meet my mentor, a composer called Edward Williams, who worked for the BBC Natural History Unit. And he was working on Sir David Attenborough's first huge landmark natural history series, which was called Life on Earth. And I joined with Edward. He became my mentor and I became his kind of apprentice. And I joined up with him at that time in 1979 and got involved with the BBC Natural History Unit. And that really started to hone my green sensibilities. And slowly I started to compose music for natural history films. So I learned a lot about the environment, a lot about wildlife.
I'll just pause you here for a second. Just wanted to know, so when you say that's when you started honing up your sensibility towards environment, so when it comes to the skill set, like for in your instance, in your case, it is the sense of poetry, the sense of music, the sense of composition. So where did you gain that from?
Well, I think I always, you know, like many children, I always read poetry from a very early age. And I loved it. I loved the rhythm of it. And I still write most of the time. I write in poetry structures. So I write in meter and rhythm and really enjoy rhyming schemes as well. So it just happened really that I liked to do that as a child. I also liked, in terms of music, I liked to get huge sheets of manuscript paper and just write all the notes on it. It didn't make any sense. If you would have played that music, it would have sounded terrible because I didn't know what I was doing. I was only maybe, 12 or 13, 14, say. I just liked the way that it looked on the paper. So that's really what also got me very interested in music, besides the fact that my father was also an amateur musician. So he was encouraging me as well to learn instruments. So I think music and words were always in me and always very important to me. So it just seemed natural that when I became an adult, luckily, I didn't park my inner child. My inner child was still very much alive, and without my inner child, I would not have been able to have written those books.
Absolutely. And I'm sure it is still alive, and that is why you still pursue that, and you're so animated when you recite those poems.
So that's really, I think it is very important for, I think, for people who are creative and people who are artists to make sure that their inner child is still vibrant and alive, because often that is what actually feeds the creativity.
So just coming back to the journey part of it, so which was your first composition? When did you when did you confess to yourself that yes, you are, you have found your destiny, and this is what you're going to stick to for the rest of your life?
Well, my first compositions, as I said, were very bad ones when I was maybe about about 13 years old. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
About 13 years old. So, but it was much later actually. It wasn't really until I'd left university, because although I did study music at university, I didn't, in my opinion, I didn't study it as seriously as I should have done. I was too busy doing other things, which I thought were
Chasing butterflies of different kinds
yeah,
back then.
exactly. Maybe
Okay.
chasing different kinds of butterflies. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And so it wasn't until really I was working and came down to Bristol,
Mm-hmm.
started working with the Natural History Unit, that I got my some of my first opportunities to compose properly. And it was only then that I realized that I kind of had a natural ability for it. So, you know, what I was hearing in my head, I could write it down and it would sound exactly like I'd heard it in my head. So, in a sense, I'd started a long time ago, but it was only in my early 20s when I fully understood that I possibly had a career ahead of me as a composer.
Okay, great. So, without really, wasting too much of time, because our audiences, I'm sure they are really waiting to hear from you some of your best poetry. So, I would request you to show those two books, though I also have them, but then seeing them
Yeah.
from your end would be a better idea.
So this
Yes.
was the first book written in 2000, about 2009, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Green Poems for a Blue Planet.
Yeah.
And really the title of the book and the whole campaign, the Green Poems for a Blue Planet environmental campaign, is about saving the planet through the power of poetry. And that title just came to me one day. I was working on something completely different, and the words just came into my head, and I knew that it was significant. I knew those words were significant, and I knew that I had to do something about it. And that's how the campaign started, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And now 10 years later, you know, with my one-man show and with the books, it's traveled all around the world and been
Absolutely.
able to have a wonderful time with
Yeah.
young people, helping with their eco-education. And the second book then followed, Verse for the Earth,
Yeah.
which also in some places in the book, it also teaches you how to write in the particular poetry structures that I've used in the collection.
Mm-hmm.
And then just a few weeks ago, I brought out this autobiography, Major and Minor Adventures in La La Land, which, yeah, which,
You have legitimized the whole word La La Land. Now it is something which is going to be used
which
in
really
most serious context.
yeah, looks at my whole life in music and in poetry, and is also a personal memoir and a good laugh along the way.
Hmm. Great. So anything from that book which you would like to just quote that creates some more curiosity for someone to go and get a copy of that? Any
Well,
memoir?
you know, there is so much in it. So if you are interested in what it means to be an artist, what it means to create,
Mm-hmm.
what it means to become a musician or get into the business, get into the industry, or what it means to write and get into the industry or create poetry, it is all in that book. You know,
Okay.
it's like an exploding primer for any young person
Mm-hmm.
who is interested in the arts, getting into the arts, or in the life of a composer and a poet. Because when you're an artist, there are lots of things that can inspire your life, but there are also lots of things that can dismantle it as
Absolutely.
well. And you have to develop a resilience, and you have to find a psychology
Mm-hmm.
that is going to help you to get through the many challenges and obstacles that life is going to present. And this book will help anybody that wants to take on those challenges.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So that's basically inspiring all the young folks you are saying who want to pursue the power of poetry or any sort of art. Actually, that also brings me to the title of this entire series. This is a new Cloud Chat series that we have introduced. So Cloud Chat series are a special offering of Buzz on Earth, where we engage and speak with global authorities on sustainability of various domains. Most of them are either sustainability leaders of various organizations, including United Nations. So this was the new edition of that, and we thought that we have to celebrate artists who are using the power of art in order to communicate the whole seriousness about this topic of sustainability, and also making naysayers get into saying yes to this whole idea and take more action and become believers into transforming the entire landscape. So yeah, so this title for this Cloud Chat series is Aesthetes of Sustainability. So we want to use that word aesthetes, that is for the artists of various
Yeah,
forms.
there's a lot in the book again um, about the environment, you know,
Mhm.
and as I say, some of the things I mentioned today. Anyway,
Yeah,
you can find it on my website at
absolutely.
martinkiszko.com. Yeah.
Sure. So now would request you to recite a few poems, because next
Sure.
20 to 30 minutes we want to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go then. So I'm going to perform, I guess, some of my favourite poems that I perform when I'm different places in the world. And I'm going to start off with an introduction that I normally do at the beginning of my show.
Sure.
Okay. So welcome to all of you that are watching today. Welcome any greenies. Welcome any non-greenies. Welcome any in-betweenies. Welcome those of you that have recycled your Lamborghinis. Welcome those of you that are toasting your homemade biofuels with a martini. Welcome those of you fans of organic green beanies. Welcome all of those of you hippies with holes in your jeans. Welcome all of you cool, classic, chilled fans of Boccherini, Rossini, Puccini. Welcome all those of you that have given up your lattes and your paninis so that you can fit into your boxers and your bikinis. Welcome those of you that have shed kilos of linguine and fettuccine to keep your tums and your butts weeny and teeny. Welcome those of you, green warriors like an eco-Athene. Welcome those of you that have sold off your Giovanni Bellinis to sustainably invest for your future bambini. Welcome those of you that want to see the earth set free like Houdini from the exploitation of those naughty non-greenies. You know what I mean? That's the best I can do, rhyming with greenie. So that usually takes me on then to talking about transport and traveling. How can we travel around the earth without using a car? And it's great that we've got lots of electric vehicles now on the roads, and hopefully there are going to be a lot more charging stations, especially in the UK, and we're going to get a lot more electric cars. But how can you travel anyway without using a car? This is called take away carbon. Take a step, take a stride, take a unicycle ride, take a horse that likes the turf, take a board to ride the surf, take a pogo, take a hop, take a long jump, take a bop, take a rowboat, water lane, take the tube, take the train, take an elephant, take a mule, take a camel to your school, take a buggy, take a pram, take a donkey, take a tram, take a troika, take a sled, take a trolley, wheel a bed, take a team of husky dogs, woof. Take a set of rolling logs, take a jog, take an amble, take a jog, take an amble, take a skateboard, take a bike, take a skateboard, take a hike, take a hike around the city, take a wheelchair, take a pram, take a snowboard, take a wheelchair, take a stride, take a unicycle ride, take a journey that doesn't use a car, take stock. If you should go that far, take heed when traveling here and there, take choices that will save our air. What about traveling even by train? You know, that's a great way to travel. But, you know, I've thought recently about, we're all talking about there being a climate emergency. And I thought about, well, what if you set the idea of climate emergency in the terms of traveling by train? So this poem is called The Climate Change Express. There's a climate change emergency on the Climate Change Express. The panic cord's been pulled, but the train still speeds ahead. The announcer calls the stations, drinks trolleys been and gone. Drinks trolleys been and gone, but the train still hurtles on. A man looks out the window at sun-scorched hills and vales. A woman reads a news report, floods in the Yorkshire Dales. They bought a return ticket and a plastic wrapped up snack, but the tunnel's exit light is fading into black. There's a climate change emergency on the Climate Change Express. The panic cord's been pulled, but the train still speeds ahead. How are we going to stop it? No chance of turning back. We could slow it down a little if we lie down on the track. It's the corporate big controllers with multinationals at the reins, which have the braking power that will finally stop the train. There's a climate change emergency on the Climate Change Express. The panic cord's been pulled, but the train still speeds ahead. So we still all have a duty, don't we, you know, to help do something about the climate emergency, which is kind of more than talking about it, I guess. So that brings me on to talking about what can we use for fuels and energy to power some of the transport that sustainable transport that we use. And one of the poems that young people especially seem to like around the world is a poem called Poo Power. And in Bristol, where I come from, a few years ago when I was the resident green poet for the European Green Capital Year, we were European Green Capital in 2015. We had buses that were going around in Bristol that were powered by biogas made from human poo. Okay. And we had them on the number 2 route in Bristol, which was great fun. So this poem teaches you really how to make your own power from, in this case, animal poo. Poo power. In England's green and pleasant land, find a field that's close at hand. Choose a cud-chewing herd of cows that has no toilet training vows. Wait until they've finished tea. Collect your dung and all your pee. Put the cow pats in a tank. Hold your breath, because it smells rank. Put a lid on firm and tight. Stir the slurry every night. Heat it up to 55 degrees until well curdled and sludgy. Whistle a time-passing sweet refrain as bacterial bug creates methane, which, as you know, is biogas your cows have made from eating grass. So now you've solved the mooted question of anaerobic tank digestion, a fancy name for making fuel not from crude oil, but from a poo. So entertain your friends for hours, turning poo into power. Okay, and we do that a lot around here now with lots of different methods for biogas. Going on to shopping, Christmas is arriving in the UK. We'll be coming out of lockdown briefly on December the 2nd. People will be going crazy, going to the shops and buying goodness knows what. This poem is called What You've Got. Okay. What You've Got. Mm-hmm. You could go out and buy a lot from a megastore or shop, from a site on the net or a magazine you get. I've no idea what you choose amongst the items you peruse. You might check out computer games, something trendy for your room, Sim laptop with the latest spec. Gadget here, a gadget there. 3 outfits you might like to wear. Perhaps a pair of running shoes, a smartphone, skateboard or a bike. Loads of music that you like. Attractive junk in gorgeous tat. Plastic this or plastic that. Sold as a trinket or a fad. Something that will entertain. Gold or silver on a chain. Of course it's cool to buy brand new and go for many, not for few. Then dash back to the next department store and purchase more from every floor. You certainly must buy a bag to carry all the stuff you have. And when you've left the shopping zone with all your money quickly blown, and all you've got is now back home, sit and chill with all you own. You could go out and buy a lot, or you could stick with what you've got.
Wow. Beautiful.
It was my birthday yesterday. Happy birthday to me. And one of the gifts, I have to say, was not my type or style or thing. But left in its original wrapping, I passed it on to my friend Sue for her dinner party due. I didn't know she didn't like, but that she passed it on to Mike, who had one similar at home, so gave it to his mate Jerome, who gave it not a second look as it was not a comic book, but a leaving present it would make for a party round at Jake's. But no, the design and colour didn't thrill, so Jake awarded it to Jill as a prize in a quiz game. But her opinion was the same. She took it round to neighbour Trace. Here's something for your brand new place, but Trace had got another plan. She gave it to her sister Fran, and that was me. Suffice to say, I got it back on Christmas Day. It must have saved folks lots of pounds doing the regifting round.
Wow.
I wonder how many of you do that. You get something and then you keep it and you pass it on to somebody else. That's a good thing to do, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, shall we do another one?
Yes, we have more time.
Okay, so I'm going to do one now start to talk a little bit about endangered species. And I love walking on the nature reserve near me here. And I love being with the trees, and I love I feel receiving energy from the trees around me. But of course, we know all about deforestation on the planet, and lots of trees are disappearing. And that's not helping us in any way whatsoever. And especially mahogany. This poem is really about disappearing mahogany trees, which are being used kind of all over the world for furniture, of course. So this is called The Case of the Murdered Mahogany. A forest glade with shade and moss. A patrol car pulls up at the spot. The detective gets out from the rear, surveys the site. What have we here? The investigator caught his breath. Such a tragic eco-death. He stared at what was once a tree, another murdered mahogany. The coroner took a look around, gave her reports on what she found. Sawn to a stump, life sap gone, she announced, tree dead at 1:30. It's murder in the first degree of a defenseless mahogany. Shown no mercy, that's a fact, and couldn't flee the criminal's act. The forensic crew was standing by with cameras and beady eyes, dressed in latex gloves and suits. They traced the ground and found the roots. We found stray branches stripped and hacked. The weapons used, chainsaws and axe. Tracks show the trunk was hauled through mud. Here's where they loaded up the wood. This tree is just another number slaughtered for its precious lumber. The once stood proud mahogany illegally sold for dirty money. The detective took a note or two. A mahogicide, it's up to you. Follow every lead, print and clue, find the trail to why and who. It won't be long before we'll see another murdered mahogany. This next one is about disappearing tigers. And as you probably know, we have got good breeding schemes now for tigers in the world, but there is still, at the last count, only about whatever 3,500, 4,000 or so tigers. And I've got this wonderful picture here in the background that's been painted by my friend, an artist called PJ Crook. And here we've got a tiger going through this jungle landscape, but guided by an angel, probably guided so that it's not being hunted or its habitat is going to be taken away from it. And this poem is called Tiger, Tiger. Tiger, tiger, where are you? Lying low or lost from view? Faint ghostly stripes flash through the night. Black gold, black gold, black gold, white. Tiger, tiger, once burned bright in poems and forests of the night, where tracks and paths felt pad of paw. Now there's no marker of your claw. Tiger, tiger's jeweled eyes meet hunter's guns. That's no surprise, for your fur, your bones, your skin are hunted for weird medicine. Tiger, tiger, torn apart, they've taken what was once your heart, that which made you stalk and stride in the forests of the night. Tiger, tiger, where are you, O one of black and golden hue? Your burning colours of the night being switched off like a light. Tiger, tiger, it's insane! 3,000 big cats now remain, O one of black and golden hue, where will you hide? What will you do? Tiger, tiger, burning bright, gone from forests of the night. Who will listen to your plight? Tiger, tiger, out of sight.
Tragic.
And whose place is it anyway? For all the creatures that we live with in the world, we need to honour, don't we? We need to honour their place on Earth. It's not just, it doesn't just belong to us, as we all know. So whose place is it anyway? That's the title of this poem. Whose place is it anyway? The golden mole is threatened by the workings of a mine. The pine marten and polecat live in borrowed time. Rhinos cannot hide from illegal poachers' guns. The cheetahs of Botswana watch their last setting suns. As Arctic ice dissolves and polar bears decline, will the wolves of Ethiopia trust humankind? Will the white-tipped shark and angel shark avoid the fishing trawl? How soon till the Opingo tree makes its final fall? The manta ray was troubled by pollution in the water, while cats of the Andes scalp her from the slaughter. Will the jaguar outrun the hunter's cold pursuit? Can we save our ponds for the great crested newt? Will snakes find their lairs as habitat turns to road? Does the parking lot come first, or the Puerto Rican toad? Will koalas in their hollows survive the ruthless logging? Shall we bother to find out? Or is that just too much slogging? Why don't we remember those with whom we share the earth? Why don't we honour and value their true worth? We wouldn't want those best friends to simply vanish without trace. So let's work together and restore their rightful place.
Beautiful.
How are we doing on time?
Yeah, that was amazing. And this is such a fundamental question. And most of the people are misplaced, with the answer for this question, that whose place is this ultimately, right?
Sorry, say that again, I didn't catch that.
I'm saying there are many people who are having their fundamentals misplaced about this concept, that whose place is this. Even people who are saying that, okay, we are saving the planet, they have to understand that they are nobody to, save the planet. You have to just behave yourself in order to exist properly on this
Alongside,
planet.
absolutely, behave yourself and to exist alongside everybody else, and every creature
Yes, yeah.
has a right to it.
So this is a very good one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this was so amazing, Martin. It was lovely to, see you perform and recite those poems in such
Well,
a animated way.
I haven't performed. It's kind of like it's difficult drawing them suddenly all back, because I haven't performed since the beginning of the year because of the lockdown.
Yes,
And
yes, I
so the
can
last time I
imagine.
was performing was in Dubai in February. So
Mm.
I'm suddenly I'm suddenly trying
Oh,
to
you were fabulous. You were fabulous. It was amazing.
trying to
And
put it all back together again. But
yeah.
yeah.
So just I'll take a few more questions that are from my side, and then I'll leave the room open for the questions from the audiences.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have initiated is called India MUN. Earlier it was called Earth Geeks. That was the name for the program. Earth Geeks is the name for the youth force globally who will be taking the sustainability movement forward.
Yes.
And now, since we have rechristened the name as India Model United Nations, so the format is actually changed a little accordingly. But the mission and the vision remains the same, that is to empower youth to solve the climate crisis. So,
Yes.
according to you, what kind of interventions can we propose to the youth in order to, something that aligns with your field of expertise? What will be your suggestion?
Well, look, I still think that we have to get our message across in many different ways.
Mhm.
And there are many different groups that are doing it in different ways. Of course, Extinction Rebellion are doing it in their way,
Yes, yes.
and celebrity conservationists and ecologists and so on are doing it in their way of communicating. I'm doing it
Right.
in my way with
Mhm.
the power of poetry.
Yeah.
And I would still say that getting your message across in a short, succinct form, like poetry, is very powerful. You only have to go back into history to look at the power of poetry. The romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley said that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. I mean, just think about that line. Poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. What it means is that a poet can often lead the way. A poet can often say something, that can take a whole movement forward. Why did the ancient Greeks use so much poetry? Why did in medieval England, we had what's called debating poems, where people would debate with each other, but through poetry.
Okay.
And then we had, the whole of the romantic poet movement, who, people like Keats and Shelley and Wordsworth, and Wordsworth said, nature never betrays the heart that loves her. Nature never betrays the heart that loved her. And these romantic poets went out into the wilderness, went out in the countryside. They wrote poems about the countryside, and they came back into the big industrial cities. People who were sort of a bit frightened and a bit unsure about what was out there in the countryside,
Mhm.
and they learnt from those poets about nature, about the countryside, so that they could then go out and connect with it themselves. Let's jump forwards again with poetry to say the 1960s, especially in America. We had a group of poets called the Beat Generation, and those poets were very involved with the civil rights movement, and they were involved with justice you know, and making and democracy and making sure that we were all living the best lives that we could live. And they were doing it through their poetry. They were causing revolution. Can you believe it? They were causing revolution. You know, they were spearheading, leading, in a sense, what happened in the civil rights movement in America by using their poetry to feed it. If you take again something like the Statue of Liberty, when the Statue of Liberty was being erected on the pedestal, they commissioned the poet Emma Lazarus wrote a poem which went on the bottom of the pedestal. And the poem was all about the Statue of Liberty described as the mother of exiles. So the mother of everybody that needed a place to go. And every migrant that needed a place to go should really go to America. And the poem talks about gathering those huddled masses. Well, how amazing that that poem now, it had its time in history to state that when America was welcoming migrants, but now it has a fantastic irony, doesn't it? Has a fantastic irony that that country is not so welcoming, and yet that poem about welcoming huddled masses from all over the world is on the most iconic statue in the United States. And that's the power of poetry and how it can change over the centuries as well. And that's why I believe that any ecological movement can use the power of poetry to drive whatever their movement is. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And
how it's happened in history.
Yeah. So when it comes to, just trying to create more and more awareness on some of the tech innovation related concepts. So how do you see that art can play a role? Not exactly poetry, but in any form that you see that art can be made as an intervention that we can engage youth with and use that as an instrument.
Well, I think any form of creativity can engage. You know, whether it's the visual arts, whether it's poetry, whether it's literature, whether it's filmmaking, whether it's just having an exhibition. I mean, a lot of the workshops that I do with young people when we use poetry, often we take we get our poetry and we write it on junk. So here's the poem: take away carbon, take a step, take a stride, take a unicycle ride, take a horse, license turf, take a board, license turf, take a pogo, take a hop, take a long, take a bop, take a robot, take a walk, and so on. I'm going too fast for myself now. You know, I forget it about halfway through. Take a kayak or canoe, take a ski or take snowshoes, take a pump, take a sail, take a glider, go by rail, go by rail, go by rail, take a wheelchair, take a cart, take a butt-fired super fart, take a hang glide from aloft, take sedan chairs, take a trot, take a stickball, take a plum, take a rickshaw from Hong Kong, take a snowboard, take a trek, take them stilts, take a pumpkin coach with fairies, take a milk float from the dairies, and so on. So all the ways that we can travel written on my son's old skateboard. And then we have a poem about plastic, about how much plastic there is and how too many plastic bottles, and that's the poem is written around the plastic bottle. And then I had a poem about too many cod being taken out of the sea, and this is my takeaway paper that I would normally eat my fish and chips out of. So I use the paper and the tray and the fork, and I've written the poem on that to make my point. And then my poem about plastic bag, written on a plastic bag here, and so on. So using junk to make the point that these are the things we're concerned about, and we're putting our message on that. And then when I work with young people, what we then do is that they create all this stuff, and I've done some amazing things with privilege to see what they've come up with. I mean, one exhibition that children created like this, even they were even writing poems on nappies. You know, children, babies' nappies, saying don't throw the nappies away. Or they're writing on banana skins. Don't throw your banana skins out on the street. And we had this whole exhibition of all this junk with poetry written on it, and that makes the point. So you can use art, you can use film. It's all about. It's not about the medium really. It's about this. It's about what is the idea. What is the concept? What how can we get what's the most interesting way, unusual way to get the message across? And this is why I usually do mine with humor, because instead of dropping a huge green 50-ton weight on everybody's head, I'm saying, look, there's a lot of serious topics here, and we're not gonna be doing anything by getting really depressed about it. So let's have a little eco chuckle about it all, and remember what we need to do by coming into contact with a fresh way of using art and sustainable themes.
I also remember one of the speech by Steve Jobs where he mentioned his love for calligraphy as a kid, and that was one of the core, fundamental reasons that he quoted was responsible for him to be as creative when it came to designing Apple products. So all those Apple lovers who think that Apple products are great, they have to understand that it all actually boils down from the fact that somebody had love for creativity, somebody actually learned calligraphy in a certain manner. So from there it got inspired, and from there you got that love to get that finesse. And for sustainability, I'm sure that creativity is at the core of it, because we are dealing with something which we are not aware of, and to deal with something which you're not having answers for, you need to come up with new solutions, and new solutions will only come in when you make your mind open and think about it from a fresh perspective.
And when you're thinking about those things, like I said, with when the Green Poems for Blue Planet title came into my head, you have to be very careful not to let ideas disappear, because things go through our minds all the time, and we think, oh, that would be a good idea, and then suddenly we throw it away and it goes. And you have to be careful to be able to, when the thing comes into your head, to stop it and examine it and say, maybe this is the way, maybe this is the different idea, the original idea. And it may seem ridiculous to you at first, or it may seem pointless, or it may seem like it's not a very good idea at all. But often those ones are the best, the ones that disappear, the ones that we throw away. We just need to spend more time, because they're almost like they're given to us. And that's what happened to me with Green Poems for Blue Planet. It chose me. I did not wake up one day and say, I'm going to have an environmental campaign. It's going to be called Green Poems for the Blue Planet. The words kind of were given to me. I knew it was important. And then I started to think about it and decide what was going to happen with those words. And here we are 10 years down the line.
That's a very important point that you made, and it reminded me of what my mentor has told. He has told me to start a practice of journaling. So whatever thought comes to your mind, just don't let it pass off. Just note it somewhere, and you can revisit. And once you note it somewhere, there is much higher likelihood of examining it and using it for some good purpose. And you'll be yourself amazed to see the kind of ideas you get through the day.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah.
So great. We are almost nearing the end of this discussion, and I would request any questions from the audiences. If anyone has any question, you can please raise your hand, and we will let you speak. Okay, we have my mentor, Mr. Krishnamurthy, the first person. Pawan, could you please allow him to speak?
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
It's
great. Excellent. Excellent. Martin, thank you so much for that very entertaining, edutaining, funny, and yet profound presentation, if I can call it that.
Well, it's certainly unusual doing it in lockdown, I can tell you.
Very much so, and all credit to you for being able to deliver it with such great effectiveness, despite the various constraints. You know,
That's
doing it
very kind of you.
doing it in a very constricted environment, and all the rest, and doing it on a small screen, and so on. So I can only imagine the constraints that you've had to overcome to deliver this. So very nicely done. So it's the tip of the iceberg. I can only see the tip, and I know that there is much more to this than what we've seen today. And having said that, you know, basic question that I have for you, Martin, is you have a very profound message for global audiences, for children globally. How would you suggest that we take some of your messages that that originate in English? How do we take that and convert it and translate it into some other languages where we have, you know, countries with huge children population?
Well, it's a very good question, and I think the answer is it's a very tricky one, because, as you can probably hear, virtually all of my poetry is in rhyme.
Yes, indeed.
So that is somewhat problematic when it comes to translation. Of course, it's fine if one's in a country where there is English, like in India, is virtually a second language, or in places where I was in Dubai in February, and places like that. Do you know, I think about this a lot, and if I could think of a way that the message could be, or if somebody could help me and say, this is a way that the message could be more globally, you know, disseminated, then that would be great. You know, there have been in the past, there have been opportunities, but they've never actually materialized, because you know, you can't do it all by yourself. That's the
sure. You know, and one could, exactly, and one could also argue that some of the nuances that you express could get lost in translation, quite literally, and then they would have to be presented in a very different paradigm in the context of some other language and culture. But it could be done with a lot of work and effort.
I think it could be done, Mahesh, because, you know, I've just written what is the world's first eco-epic poem. And it's called King Frank and the Knights of the Eco Quest. So it's about three knights that are chosen to go in search of pure clean water, which has disappeared from their kingdom. And as they go on their quest, they meet various obstacles like river leachate and plastics and climate change, for example. Anyway, the book is currently being illustrated. It's about 9,000 words all in rhyming couplets with 17 characters, and on the face of it, it would seem that would be very, very difficult to translate into for other cultures. But actually, I think not. And I think about in India in particular, because there's a movie that I love to watch called Jodha and Akbar. You probably know the story, but you know, and a lot of those movies, you know, are about kind of like the you know, in the history, the Indian knights and all those wonderful kind of obstacles that they're on, battles and romances that they all came across. And I thought to myself, really, my epic poem would sit very, very well, you know, working with somebody in India, where it could be transformed into that kind of more historical, with that kind of historical paint finish on it, if you like. So I think there are ways of doing it, but of course, whether it still ends up in rhyme or not is another matter, but that may not be so important.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much for that, and enjoyed your presentation. And we will continue this discussion offline. I think I've hogged this long enough for today, so I'll yield to Gayatri.
Great to hear you, Mahesh, and yeah, I'd love to do that.
Pawan, I would request you to unmute K. He had a question. I would like him to ask that in person.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Hi, Martin. First of all, hello. I love that. That was so good. Well done, you. It was wonderful. You are an inspiration.
I tell you, my brain with all, I'm sitting here with all this stuff around me. I've got clocks, I've got stopwatches, I've got signs telling me what to do. I'm thinking,
Oh, you did marvellously. I so enjoyed it. One thing is, 2 of my friends have missed it. Is there a recording that they can tune in?
Yeah. Yes. There is a recording. In fact, the session is going on live on YouTube, and we will be sharing a recording very soon.
Great. But my question was, have you managed to combine your eco-poetry with music, your music at all? It's just that you struck me as the excellent rapper that I always knew you were. And I just wondered if you'd ever done that or thought of doing that.
Well, I did write, when I was in Antarctica, I did perform live the first ever rap in Antarctica.
Ah, I want to see that. Is it on YouTube?
No, do you know what? I've never used music in the show at all. I've always kept it just. I think because I've always wanted to keep the 2 things separate. My life as a musician separate, and my life as a poet separate. But having said that, last year I did start working on a piece that actually involved taking some of the green poems and setting them to music. I don't really want to say much about it online because I'm protecting all my ideas. But yeah, so I had got it in mind, and that was going to be because I have done it only once before. I did a performance of some of the green poems backed by orchestra.
Excellent.
That was at the what is known as now the Beacon in Bristol.
Oh yes.
So I have done it. So there is a precedent for it, and I am ambitious to do it again. But the thing with these things is that money. I mean, it all
know it. Yeah.
It costs a lot of money to put musicians alongside you.
Yeah. Oh well, I'm glad to hear that it's in your mind, and I look forward to what may transpire. Thank you. Really
anything can happen for sure. Nice to hear you. Nice to see you, Kay.
Nice to see you too.
Bye.
All right, Martin. So I think we will put this to an end now. It's already 6. And thank you so much for coming over to the studio. This is a virtual studio, but it was really fantastic to host you here and see you perform live for our audiences. It really didn't feel that you're performing after almost 8 to 9 months. It felt as if, you have been doing that every single day.
It felt like I have to get I'm going to have to get some of the brain cells cleaned up, I think.
No.
Lockdown, I'll send them straight in for a service.
No, it was perfectly fine, and it was in fact too good. In fact, perfectly fine is actually an understatement, I would say. So thank you so much. And do you have any last message as we conclude this show for our audiences across age groups? This need not be just for the youth.
I just want to say great green gratitude for you joining me, in what are very challenging times. And I want to send my love to you all, and I want to hope and pray for your protection. And I wish you all, the best in our combined efforts to save our planet, preferably through the power of poetry.
I have a question. Please don't mind asking that. Have you not written anything on COVID-19? It is such an interesting character, no?
That's a good question. You know what? I told myself I've written a sonnet. I wrote a sonnet during the summer called Self-Isolation Sonnet.
Okay.
That was the only thing that I wrote, because I said to myself at the beginning of the COVID era, I am not going to write anything about this, because there will be A, so many people writing about it, B, we'll be hearing so much about it, C, it will be absolute saturation point. And again, I was kind of drawing on my inner child to say, what we need in these times is we need to entertain. You know, we need something that we need to be to set our focus on other things besides being kind of consumed. And it's right to be consumed by it, because it is awful and it is frightening. But we can't let it totally consume us, because there are other very, very important things that we have to be getting on with. You know, we have to be getting on with our own mental health. You know, we need to be entertained, and we need to be drawing energy from nature. You know, and we need to be using our creativity in as many ways as we can. So I made the active decision that I wasn't going to get sucked in to writing about something that was actually quite a depressing state of affairs.
Unfortunately, not many people have written about that either, neither about COVID-19 nor about the kind of hope that people should live by around that. So there is still some hope that you should look at it and write whenever the right opportunity arises.
Absolutely, yes, definitely.
Okay, great, Martin. Thank you so much. And it was lovely having you. And thank you to all our audiences. Thanks for being so patient and being here with us. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.